A German spy arrested? According to his landlord, Joseph Greenberg was a rather unassuming fellow. He paid his rent on time, never made any noise, complaints, and always helped old Mr. Connery carry Mrs. Connery carry her groceries up the stairs. In reality, it was all a cover, something the landlord learned when she opened Greenberg's empty apartment, the sight of piles of surveillance equipment and folders with swastikas stamped upon them. Thinking quickly, she called the police, who in turn informed the FBI, and arrested Greenberg in the morning as he left for work. John Greenberg was revealed to actually be Joseph Hansen, an agent from the German Upper, ironically disguised as a Jewish American. His mission was a secret job at Bell Telephone. It was a secure job at Bell Telephone, studying their communications infrastructure and identifying flaws for the installation of wiretaps and other espionage methods. Even more concerning was that his phone book had a telephone number to several local NPP politicians inside, and it seemed he was trying to contact the party's fringe elements, including the fascist agitator Fritz Parker Yankee. Charges for the violation on the Espionage Act has already been brought against him, though we will likely end up simply being deported back to Germany rather than facing a long prison term in the United States. That's one less Nazi to worry about. Right. The Civil Rights Act simply means that it's another means, and it's another effort on the part of the president to dominate the country by force and to put into effort these uncalled for and downright proposals he has reclaimed under the guise of so-called civil rights. And I tell you, the American people from one side to the other had better wake up and oppose such a program, as if they don't, the next thing they will be in a totalitarian state in these United States. Efforts to move any sort of civil rights legislation through the Senate have yet to come. Again, met resistance from the conservatives within the party. This time, however, the filibuster and angry outrage were developed to a room with a very different atmosphere, with popular support for the bill only growing once staunch opponents are beginning to waver, and some NPP senators have even approached us in secret to give their support for the bill. Many experts are now predicting that the bill will now have a very real chance of passing the Senate, especially with Vice President Kennedy's authorship. Tell Johnson to hurry up with those details. And then we will pass it! Ooh. Let's see, how does construction go? Is Maine the first one? I always forget. I don't think Maine's the first one, which may mean that we've already made it past. Oh, Maine is. Is I really not built? Do I normally skip so many stuff? I guess reading all of them makes it take longer, so I feel like by this point I would have been further in, but I'm not at all, because I'm actually sitting here and reading all of the events. Instead of just clicking off and skipping them. I probably will not continue to read the campaign events, in hopes that the bill would be reversed, that society would return to normal. Many Southerners despised this blatant attack on their livelihood, and with support from Southern politicians, they had the power to physically defeat desegregation. Not only did the bill grant much-needed reform, but it has also caused division in the USA, not seen since the Civil War. May I remind you, the federal government overrides the state. Civil Rights Act of 1962. After years of political infighting and raising dissidents across the nation, there may be a watershed moment. Whilst the Republican Democratic Party had dragged their feet on the issue for years, Vice President Kennedy approached the bill named the Civil Rights Act of 1962, but found harsh competition in the president himself, who desired to postpone the issue longer. Recent events, however, sparked a change in the Senate, who fear a civil conflict, quickly ratified the bill. While the bill has been celebrated nationwide, it's has caused other issues. Tension between Kennedy and Nixon are high, and the president's actions against the bill caused the public opinion to drop even further, as Southern politicians have begun defecting to the NPP en masse. Many fear that this will be the toppling point for the American politics. Okay, so a turning point in the story of our nation. This will create civil rights, which gives us those following benefits. It's not actually that many benefits, but it means that we have equality underneath the law. But here's the problem. So, I think I showed the map before, but this is now the map. As many Southern Democratic people, without actually being elected in, swapped over to the far-right NPP. Now, we have a choice. We're going to have an easier time getting the centers now, because the centers are no longer part of that. But the problem is that we still need to try to maintain or regain the South. Which I feel like we could if we had some good. But the thing is that it's random chance. So if we only ever get bad or awful ones, we might not be able to get it still. We also need to get the Great Lakes, that way they don't get a seat within this section. Two young men walked on the streets of LA, basking in the midday sun. But the topic of their conversation was dismally gloomy. So did you hear that the Nazi spy they caught in New York? They're saying he was trying to get in touch with Yankee, of all people. It's crazy, isn't it? The other replied. I know how much they hate the Japs, hell. Who doesn't around here? But I never thought they'd get in bed with the Krauts. The spy was just reaching out to them. Didn't say anything about them agreeing to anything, the first man said. The two men, like plenty of others in California, had their own sympathies towards the NPP. After all, everyone in LA or the Bay Area had to live only a few miles away from a humiliating reminder of 1945, and the NPP were the only ones who seemed to have any interest in getting the treaty ports back. He turned his head, turned to his friend and asked, So, what do you think? Was Yankee on it? And then we make the choice. I don't know if this actually has any effect. I don't know. But I definitely think he's wearing a Lederhosen underneath. 64 election. I mean 64 election. No, yeah, 64. That'll mean that person goes back, I think. These places are still toss-ups. Oh. Media slams Nixon. Although President Nixon's sweeping electoral victory 2 years ago may prove that he was once enchanted the American people, it seems that the magic has swept them into the polls, and 1960 is wearing off for many of them, and many of those people also headlines ribbed with pun-laden insults seem to be everywhere, and titles like Nixon Needs Fixin', Tricky Dick in a Pickle, and Lawlessness and Disorder fill the newsstands. The main source of their ire is the rising tensions of the civil rights movement in the South, and specifically the president's inability to properly contain it. The man who once staved off nuclear Armageddon, or so we would claim, now seems powerless to stop a bunch of student protesters and racist hoodlums from off, and his image is deteriorating as a result. And Nixon, who seems imparish and romantic when in comparison to his Vice President Kennedy, charm and charisma, needs all the positive press he can get. All we can do now is hope that they will eventually change their tone, although he cynically insists that the press has grudge against him and that they simply will not let go. They've got it out for him. Well, when you always look this grumpy, maybe that's why, Mr. Nixon. Maybe you should smile more. Oh, yes. President Nixon sits at the head of the table, bolt upright, a contemplative look on his face, all along the magnificent mahogany table. The presidential cabinet is seated from the Secretary of Veteran Affairs far at the end to Jack Kennedy and H.R. Hemmeld seated next to the president. So far, no one has said a word, aside from a few curt greetings. H.R. Hemmeld breaks the palpable silence. I think we know why we're here. Our friend in Guyana has gone too far and we need to do something about it. The security of the Treasury. Robert McCarthy follows the hindrance and led to speak next. Nixon still bearing on angry yet competitive look. The press documents don't know our intervention in his elections. The press doesn't know our intervention in his election. We need to threaten considerable economic ties, sanctions, condemn the diplomatic ISA. Frankly, Bob, he'll get trade from anywhere else. Hell, when Germany gets back on the field, he'll probably be in trouble because that's where he'll get it from. We'll probably, the Krauts will jump at the chance for an ally right at our doorstep. Kennedy cuts, a sharp Massachusetts accent breaking the attention in the room. What do you suggest? McCarthy says. Use our clout in the country. Threat, bribes, blackmail. McCarthy asks, shakes his head. No, just apply pressure for him to reply the act. If we threaten him, he'll double down on his opposition. And any MP on their suspects might turn against him. We'll face retribution. We can't stop that. It's the only moral response. Slowly the room evolved into conflict arguments. Various cabinet members... That's enough! The head of the table spoke. Richard Nixon stood and then spoke. I don't care about it either way. I just want the press and Birmingham both to calm the hell down. Force him. Persuade him. It doesn't matter. Get the act repealed. He turned to him and nodding. I'll do it either way. But I want your word, Henelin. And tell him to repeal the act or else. Once again, folks, I do apologize for my horrendous voice acting, but it's fun. I like doing it. Just, not that good at it. The Croatian autumn. While much of Europe seems to be in a night without dawn, over Croatia a red star rises. Forces of partisan Joseph Broz Tito, a hero to all those that oppose the people, to all of the oppressed people of the Balkans, the boogeyman of the Italian occupieds, and the notable cause of civilian casualties have finally triumphed in Croatia, as a new administration contents itself in Zeebrugge. Already lists of reactionaries and collaborators are being drawn up for detention and re-education, though many of the accused were undoubtedly party to the crimes of the Italian occupants, and others were quite possibly in the wrong place at the wrong time. The communist takeover is certainly not the end of the Croatian state, but it is perhaps a righting of the national spirit. The populace seems to have enthusiastic for both the as well as the ongoing conflict with Italy. But the long-term feasibility of both these politics is certainly questionable. What will the future bring? Yugoslavia. That's what it'll bring. But stop with the mediocre. I want good one. Oh. The South African tango. Secretary of State William Rogers was well familiar with the steps of South African tango. South African ambassador, who asked him in a vague questions about administration into the other, without any real plans of common defense or tariff liberalization, the secretary would, in turn, respond with vague updates on South Africa's application, now nearly a decade old. It suited both parties. The South Africans wanted the threat of OFN membership to cow the Germans, and the OFF needed to preserve the last democracy in Africa. Neither, however, wanted a German intervention, which OFN membership would provoke. Thus, South African tango continued on, without end. How can I help you today, Ambassador? Roger struck a neutral tone as he... to hide his boredom. He was near certain that the response would be entirely predictable. We're doing very well. And about the OFND, the Germans are making their move, Ambassador. Hexag Boers nationalists are talking to the Germans. South Africa is in danger. We need the Americans' help. That got Roger's attention, and his stomach dropped in the most unexpected turn of decade-long discourse. What kind of help are you talking about? Financial, intelligence, and above all, military. Newton said, if the Boers and Germans want to fight, we won't make it easy for them. No more dancing, no more games. Yeah, it's half. Yes, good. Talk with them. Today, less than 2 weeks after an ensuing passing of the National Security Act by Jayana, the president claimed that the act was a temporary measure, and orders have been restored, such that time measures are no longer necessary. This comes as a shocking turn of events. Most of the free world, with many experts expecting the strongman Murray to continue his opposition, the president refused further comment, which has left many wondering, has Birmingham had a change of heart? Better have, buddy. I do know you have liberty for the few, so no matter what, taking you can't be better than letting you. That means we don't have to have a war. That's pretty good. I'll do one in the Great Lakes. So, for those curious, what this focus tree is it splits in two halves. It has the South Africa plan, or the cracking of the shield, which is reinforcing South Africa. Then it has the Forgotten Allies, which is nice, but from what I can tell, most of it, except for the cracking open of the cases, has very little positive effect on over here. And no progressive voter is going to vote for the party whose last candidate was Storm Goddamn Thornburg. Worst of all, we still don't even have a candidate. Well, it would help if someone had bothered to put their name forward, joked Harrigan, with a bare hint of contentment. Perhaps if we were more... if we were to support our core working-class voters in the Midwest and elsewhere, rather than acknowledging the segregationists and filling our ranks with West Coast elite types. Nuremberg herself, a proud Oregon proud Oregon stock, stood up with an offended look. Everyone here is fighting for the same thing. I've done plenty to speak up for the underprivileged. At least I don't sit around writing essays about it. Scoops, sat still for a moment, smiling ambitionally on his colleagues, continued to block and snipe at one another. In a way, they were a perfect reflection of the center as a whole, determined to enact change, but endlessly at its own throat about what that change could be. Finally, he coughed, and the others too immediately ceased their childish exchange and looked at him once more. You're both very different, which is exactly why you need someone who can speak everyone's language. If we're to have anyone in this election, we need to move forward with one voice. Looked at each other, and Scope glanced at the window. I don't know who the man to lead us is, but he better show up soon, or we're screwed. Who will speak for the center? So, if I had decided to let Nixon veto the bill, at that point they would have, instead of going, we don't really have a candidate, they would have been talking about getting Kennedy's brother as the candidate. So perhaps we might get another one. Okay. Richard Nixon stands in the Oval Office, thoroughly looking out of the window, drawn broken far on the horizon, and a blazed red-orange sun raising in the distance, casting a warm light across the White House lawn. He sighed. It was going to be another long, dull day. Meeting and bills and foreign policy, and a sharp rap on the door. H.R. Hammond stepped through the doorway, a newspaper rolled up in his hands. What is this? Nixon said. Bad news, Dick. We're not done with Burma yet. Another word, Hammond flings the paper down on the president's desk, turning it around such that Nixon could read the headline. Nixon supported Guyanese segregation. Whistleblower, Nixon muttered. Nixon muttered. He read the article somehow. He reads the article somehow. The news found out. He reads the article, period. Somehow the news found out, period. Somehow they knew the government got Barbara Brahms elected. Somehow they knew that Nixon administration still supported him and his radical segregation policy. Nixon rubs his face, taking a deep breath. Harold, he starts, get Kennedy and Laring, call a meeting. I need a phone line to the CIA director. Fables Berman was no idiot. He clearly knew that the key to executing a coup was limit command during only letting people find out about the coup once it was a flat accomplishment. Which is why he made sure to invite the Americans and Canadian ambassadors to a formal dinner. While they ate and sipped champagne, the soldiers' Guyana Defense Force occupied the Parliament building, shut down the switchboards and broadcast stations, dragged MPs out of their homes and into the police vans, and carried out summary court-martials and sentenced for particular indignity. It was not until Ambassador Spencer King returned to the American Embassy that he learned of what was transpired, and a jury-rigged chain of communication managed to put him back in touch with Washington. Nixon called the emergency meeting with John Staff. This shall not stand. Not on our watch. And then... oh. There we go. Oh, there we are. Hello. There we are. And there we go. Ooh.
Oh, we just have to wait. This war should be relatively quick. We should only need to take Georgetown and the war would be over. As you can see, already at the brink of capitulation with Russia's capital. I get a bit perturbed with this one in particular because you lose support for starting it, even though it's guaranteed. But then, when the war's over, you don't regain that support. The only option is you lose it, and you either win it, and you get no benefits as the R&D. Which I guess makes some sense, because it's the R&D who manipulated it and had to start this, so yeah. Makes sense. But, like, you don't even get back the support that immediately left. After several days of strategic fighting between Guyana's militia forces and forces of the American Expeditionary Forces landing on the coast, the Pentagon announced that Guyana's President Phoebes Birmingham was taken into custody this evening. American troops now patrol the streets of Perbo and Georgetown in an interim capacity until the legitimate government of Guyana's people control the nation. With widespread disorganization reported from the Guyanese military following the former President Birmingham's coup, defense analysts expect that the American political action would face little opposition. The State Department issued a press release welcoming interventionist success and the return of Guyanese democracy in Guyana, while exempting high hopes for future cooperation with the governments in waiting in matters of mutual agreement. They're back in the free organization, and they're back to being essentially a puppet state. But unlike last time, where they were ruled by a dystopic dictator, they now have a somewhat... I think he is righteously elected this time. But, yeah. Oh. A lackluster campaign. Yes, fingers crossed. Nice. There we go. But we'll at least win those seats. We'll lose those. Oh, well, no. They'll maintain that. We'll lose that one. We might lose that one. And we'll lose that one. Oh, I didn't even notice New Hampshire. Oh, New Hampshire. Skip another stupid event. Ah. Sorry. I should probably keep talking. So, next, instead of just going down that one, we're actually going to start this one and go down the India focus tree. Turning and tossing, tossing, turning night. Sorry, actually, somehow I like this song. Tossing and turning, turning and turning, turning all night. Jumped out of bed, So what I used to do was just that one, and that one, but I've started doing this one because I completely forgot. No, I didn't completely forget. I didn't realize that this one made the Indonesian revolution stronger, and like this one makes the British slightly stronger. But I have only ever seen the British fail once. Once they'd actually picked this. And that was a very disappointing loss for them. Oh, come on. Stop that. So I'll probably end up going down the focus tree. I'll have slightly less political power, but you know what? Who cares? Milkman? Oh no. So we're gonna be saving up these because as part of the India focus tree, you invest into India, which will mean that you're able to do 2 of the investments end up giving you a boost to your. At least I didn't skip this one. Good afternoon, Dick. Good afternoon, Dick, J. Edgar Hoover said as he stepped into the Oval Office, quietly shutting the door behind him. Nixon furrowed his brow and replied, "I told you not to call me that." "You tell me a lot of things, Mr. President." "Well, I had to postpone one press conference where the media wasn't going to be after my head. This better be good." What Hoover had to say wasn't good. It was certainly important. The FBI's investigation into the origins of the blackmailer had seen little success, but there remained the question of what to do with the blackmail itself. Hoover, ever cautious and ever considerate, asked the president whether it would be best to seal it away in some classified vault or destroy it as much as possible. Either way, it would be hopefully stayed buried forever, although it could be seen some value in the future. The existence of the blackmail could, after all, provide rather large boon to the president in the upcoming midterm elections. "Keep them secret, keep them safe." Oh no, I think people are coming back. Well, I might have to end this stream a bit earlier. We might just do a year-by-year stream then. Which, I don't know if that would be that good, but you know what? Who cares? Yeah, oh no, the dogs are barking. That means people are back. I gotta get out of the house. I'm so sorry, folks. One moment. My dogs, they're barking. Sorry, it wasn't actually. There we go. It wasn't actually people coming back home. It was, in fact, the fact that my dog saw a squirrel. Yep. I sometimes dislike my dog, but she is an idiot. Washington AP President Richard whoops, let me actually pause this before it disappears. Met with the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru. At the White House today. The meeting, the first between Nixon and Nehru, was the first step on the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. Soon, it to be followed by multiple stops in Washington, Virginia, New York, and the Oval Office. President Nixon referred Americans' commitment to deepening American political and economic ties to India. India is a vast nation, blessed with munitions of resources and a rising population. It is the belief of this administration that the United States of America would be foolish if not to embrace your republic and all the opportunities that it offers to the world. Pepper! Following the president's remark, Prime Minister Nehru returned with a courtesy of its own. The people of India are on the verge of great success in the field of economics, social programs, and national developments. We wish to use this success to join hands with the free world. I would like to thank